Hello and welcome to today's InDiCo-Global webinar. My name is Xavier Piednoir from Etsy, one of the partners in the InDiCo-Global project. InDiCo-Global is a European Union-funded coordination and support action aimed at developing global cooperation for digital standards and related policies. The partners in InDiCo-Global are Etsy, Senelec, the three European standardization organizations, as well as Martel Innovate and Trust IT. The InDiCo-Global project has set aside a budget of €1 million to fund smaller projects in target regions on the basis of proposals gathered and evaluated through an open call process. Today, we are going to hear from such a project in Chile. Christian Jepsen and Matthias Aranguiz will be our speakers today. They are from the Law, Science and Technology program at Pontificia Universidad Católica in Santiago, one of the leading universities, if not the top one in Latin America. Christian will inform us about the ongoing work to promote standardization in a context where Chile has embarked on a series of transformative policy and regulatory initiatives in the domains of fintech, cybersecurity, and AI. And thanks to this funding from InDiCo-Global, Christian, Matthias, and their colleagues are working on activities and events supporting capacity building as well as awareness of what is done in the European Union, including standards and best practices. But I leave it to Christian and Matthias to elaborate on all this. So before I hand over to our speakers, I would like to remind you of some quick points about our webinar today. The session will be recorded and shared on all InDiCo-Global channels. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking to avoid any background noise. Use the raise hand feature if you'd like to contribute or ask a question during the discussion. Feel free to share comments or questions in the chat box at any time. And last, please turn on your camera if you're comfortable. It's always nice to see who we are speaking with. Now, over to you, Matthias, as I believe you are the first speaker in the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Nice to meet you, everyone. We want to share a presentation with Christian. We're changing some topics. I'm going to start doing a small presentation of what we're doing here in the program. Then Chris is going to do a presentation about the aims of the project and why we're working on that. Then Chris is going to do a presentation of a general scope of what we have in Chile currently as the regulation. And finally, I'm going to make a small presentation about the AI Act, who was approved in one of the chambers in the Congress just yesterday in the afternoon. Then it's very up to date. Then the presentation wasn't strong enough. Then, well, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you, Xavier, for all the help and support you are giving us within this project. At the Catholic University of Chile, we have this program of law, science, and technology for 10 years already. I arrived to university in 2019, and the main focus initially was data protection. Chile was one of the first countries within Latin America to have a data protection law, and we didn't have at that time programs or courses or much research, to be honest, in the country. The initial focus was data protection. We worked a couple of years in that. We created the first program, data protection, in the country, and one of the first in the region for postgraduates. Now we have been teaching it for 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. Then we jump into artificial intelligence at the second focus. We also create the first program in artificial intelligence, who was a bit of a challenge for us as a law school, as member of the law school, to teach artificial intelligence, because it was a bit further for our scope of knowledge. Then we create a very interesting program. What we did a program of 120 hours of artificial intelligence for lawyers, in which the first quarter was taught by mathematicians and engineers, and it was the first challenge, to put a mathematician giving classes to a lawyer. Thank God it was nicer that we thought. And then we had this idea how we teach the rest 90 hours of artificial intelligence. Then our focus was to go to the expert, and we bring the legal managers or the of the main companies from the country, and we divide it in three areas. No, the first quarter we bring the chief legal from divisions from the government. Then we bring people to the Supreme Court. We bring people from different ministries, undersecretaries, etc., to teach which process they have to go through to incorporate artificial intelligence. Uh, then, of course, we did a selection of the topics, but that was very, very challenging. Then the second, we did exactly the same, but with the main companies. Of course, we bring the technological companies, we bring Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, etc. But then we bring to the university to teach the legal manager of banking industry, of the retailers, um, and different companies, the biggest companies up to teach what was the challenge for the legal managers when they hire or develop in-house different technologies. And finally, and that was very interesting at that time as well, we bring legal experts from the military world, no? To see how you do procurement, how you incorporate, and how you develop, and what are the ethical challenge they need to face when they are developing artificial intelligence with the military. No, and that was a very interesting framework to work. It's been working already for 5 years. That program. We have over, I don't know, like 500 alumni who has passed this quite difficult program, and the last, so after that we did exactly the same with fintech, uh, but with the fintech program, it was 110 hours of program. We did a market surveillance. No, we talk with the companies, we talk with lawyers, and we develop a program similar to the artificial intelligence one, with a lot of classes from engineers and business people. Um, and now we are working mostly on defense, no, and technology and defense. We're launching two programs this year that we would not like to disclosure for now, because let's see if the bureaucracy of the university allows us to launch it this year and not maybe next year. But we're working mostly with the military this year, and how to bring the knowledge that the military have to the civil society. And that has been the program in the teaching area. We have over 10 courses in undergrads. We have 4 courses in postgrad course, and we're doing a lot of research. No? And research mostly focused on practical research. And in that, one of the areas, and that is my last point, one of the areas that we're most worried about is how we bring certainty into law. That particularly in technology regulation, we have the main problem of too many principles, too many big words, but it's hard to put it down and know when someone is under due diligence in the development. And for us, standards was the standardization was the path to bring certainty, to bring what the law was supposed to do, um, and to allow companies and developers to have standards that they can focus and go through. And with that, I pass the word to Chris for particularly this project.
Thank you, Matthias. It was very insightful, and you cover all of our our main capabilities that we're bringing to this project and how we can collaborate with InDiCo-Global. So I want to share with you a little bit presentation just to let me launch this. This. I think it's now showing, but yeah, I see. Thanks. Well, so my presentation first is going to be on Chile and key regulation and the role of standards with law. Because here in Latin America we have a civil law or continental law approach to how we regulate. So rules and norms has a lot of impact on the day-to-day basis on the industry or the different all the different things that a country like Chile or in the region do. Um, the second, and I want to connect with the things that Matthias said. First, how our project deal with the InDiCo-Global. Our main focus or our project is first aim to advance capacity building with technical communities, standardization players in Chile, policymakers, by a key concept that we named like knowledge exchange between key stakeholders. Um, Mostly is to bring different visions to the table, and then they can collaborate, they can share their ideas, and they can bring new ideas in Chile mostly, and hopefully in the next future step um, to the region. So our first aim or goal is to advance how they understand, how they understand all the environment of the standardization and the intertwine between regulation. So this is our first goal, and it's so important how our own capacity in the university we think we can help a lot with that. Second is to provide an update on the development and implementation of different data protection, digital economy, and cybersecurity standards. First, what is happening in the European Union. So with ETSI, with Senelec, and with the different mirror committees and their own national SDOs. So they have Europe has a developing environment of a standardization that has a lot of a trajectory doing what they do best, standardize. And to one key important thing is that Europe has a lot of different countries with different barriers that we think it's so interesting that a region that is so different at its in some things or some core things like language can unify their goals and make some regulations that bring a lot of harmonization and a lot of market integration and operability in the all this changing area. So we think that that's a model to follow and to learn about it and how we can replicate or bring things that could work here in Chile and Latin America. Because we have some barriers. Maybe it's not the language, but we have other barriers that are not that are being like a rock in the road to make all the countries work like we want to be. They are working. So our project deal with those three things. Mainly, our activities are going to be on that side, building on knowledge exchange, bringing some key players from Europe, bringing with our key players or stakeholders in Chile. So we're very glad to have this opportunity to advance standardization and good regulation here in the first country, and we hope in the future in the region. So second, I think this is very important to to address how we can collaborate or why are we doing this. It's because we want to align with the InDiCo-Global, and we think it has a lot of value. And first, with advanced mutual understanding between these two regions are important to bring not only market integration and um, either other things that could be important to just have a good relationship between the different countries. So first, we think advance the mutual understanding regarding interoperability and ICT or digital standards between Chile and the European Union. It's a core thing. And second, we have this aim to foster to advance different key technologies outlined in the uh, Europe Horizon agenda that we think are value to bring here, like technology advance are to how we can integrate from academia to public sector to private sector to develop better outcomes on the different projects that finally give advances or great results in all the society that all these projects are being carried on. So this is how we collaborate with InDiCo-Global. But now the second part of my presentation, it's going to be more in the context, bring it down what is happening in Chile with the regulation and why it's important to have these kind of projects. So one of my goals with the presentation showing you a regulatory landscape is why how are we dealing with this new landscape of regulatory norms and how this is going to be a challenge for the people that are being regulated by these laws. And so, as I said first, our region is very norm driven, it's very rule driven. Obviously, we have our CDOs, we have a different kind of integration, but at the national stage, we have a regulatory landscape that it's strong and powerful to enforce by rules or norms. So all that the things that are voluntary in these countries has his own challenges. Um, so at first, I want to address what is happening in Chile with the laws, the regulatory, because we have been seeing a lot of laws being passed from the Congress in the last 3 years. Despite I include the cybercrime, it's a little bit old. I mean, 4 or 5 years, not more than that. But I think it's part of the criminal area that's a little part of it, of the different ecosystem, regulatory ecosystem. And then on my final part, I'm going to be addressed how standards and law, it's how we can see how these laws that are not being necessary in act, because for example, data protection, cybersecurity law has a lot of a little time being passed from the Congress. Even data protection is going to be enacted or enforceable only in 2026. Sorry, 2027. So it's these are new norms. These are new ecosystems. It's the first part of implementing it. For example, when Europe enact or pass the GDPR in 2016, and then 2 years of vacancy to be completely enforceable. So we are in that strange time frame where we are adapting, but the regulator it's not enforcing yet. So the different actors are just seeing how I can implement this, how I can deal with this a lot of new obligations or duties that I have to comply with. So this is one of the things of our context that it's important for this project, because we want to bring a little bit of guide, or a little bit of at least the discussion on how we can navigate this time frame, or this intermediate time frame. So my last part is going to be a standard. So just going straight forward to my part, just to be direct with the things that I want to present you. First, uh, the technology regulation, it's in Chile. I put you on the presentation, on the slides, the last or the most important that we're seeing, despite that we have other laws um, in different sectorial, for example, health, telecommunications, that are a little bit old. I mean, 10 years or 15 maybe. But these ones are the ones, for example, cybersecurity law, data protection law, cybercrime, and fintech law, that has have a lot of influence from the European Union. So, for example, cybersecurity law, we have it takes a lot of things from the uh, NIS2 regulation from the European Union. So if you put it, if you download both of the laws or the regulations and you put it on your screen, you can match them even with the titles of the different provisions of the document. So it's a very interesting how all actually a lot of the countries in the region and receptionate this um, influx or inputs of models of how we regulate in these key areas: cybersecurity, data protection, and cybercrime. It's a little bit different, because it came from a treaty from the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. So it was a more I think global thing being discussed, but it has a lot of European Union key concept or key principles behind it. So we think that it's going to be interesting how we are dealing with these different laws. Um, well, now no, I don't want to make you a spoiler, but how, where, or when a standard it's going to be playing on this, because we have to always remember that our region is civil law, continental law, and it's it's kind of different sometimes. So I want to share you that not only laws, as I said, because we have a so uh, I want to address something that I remember I discussed with a colleague, that here in Spanish we have this word general rule or regulation. So it could have a different meanings. Um, Regulation, we usually in our on mother tongue, where when we are speaking Spanish, we use the term regulation to denominate a lot of things, maybe all the legal system, but another different meaning is all the infralegal regulation. But in the other hand, we have the European Union that has, for example, the GDPR, that it's a regulation for all the different countries on the European Union, without the necessity of the procedure of transposition to the different countries. So it's a it's a law with all the characteristics of law, enforceable. If you don't comply, you are going to be fined. You have your obligations, your regulator, and all the what the law does, no? But here in Spanish or in the region, we have this loss and translation stuff, uh, meaning with words. So just to a little disclaimer that these decrees or general rule are mostly um, just an example. You can find a lot of them, because the specific regulator are dictating these legal documents. But these are not laws. These are infralegal regulations. So it's very interesting how we have this general law like before, and then we have this infra-legal, but are more going to the point or more in a specific area to make possible to apply the law when the stuff are being too general. So it's obviously it could be discussed, but the Congress draft all the laws with this model of regulation that are general principles, general obligations, and then you have this kind of decrees or general rules that specifies what you actually have to do. What are the specific frameworks you need to follow or you shall follow, using more legal terms. But so this put the standards in a very weird position. So where standards going to be? Because we have a lot of people says that we have laws, and that's okay. So um, standards here play a different role. That's the main idea. That could have a different role that we're seeing in the different literature or the different cases that we're seeing in other countries. So first, I just want to make you a brief overview that, and you can, if you read this these titles, you can see that our new law of data protection law has the same things that the GDPR has. Um, for example, cross-border obligations of data controller, basis for lawful processing of data, data subject rights, scope, even the extraterritorial clause in the third article of the GDPR. It's here, so you can see how Europe it's been this Brussels effect. It's actually true. This is like a case to, if you can see more in academia, a study case that you can see empirical how the Brussels effect is it's real in some countries. Obviously, it's not exactly the same because we have to put Chile in some places to make it pass on the contract and Congress. But you can see that we have even the titles are the same. Even a lot of things has the same name. Um, even the structure of the fines with the amount and then the percentage of the benefits from the last fiscal year is the same. Obviously, we have some changes, but you can see that it's so similar to what we have here and what you have in the European Union. So that's bring uh, another idea to the table that why it's so important to make this exchange knowledge, or why it's so important to have this um, to advance in mutual understanding between the regions and between Chile and the European Union, because we are having the same regulation, the same but very similar regulation, and it's at least that's completely my view. But I don't think it's bad for itself, and it could bring some benefits because it's the mutual understanding could be more easy. Obviously, it's all the things are more gray than black and white or positive or extremely negative. So it's not a dichotomy here, but I think it brings some opportunities that we can use to bring the gap and to make some understanding. So to the next law that I want to show you to just prove my point of why it's so important to have these conversations the way we're having this, because cybersecurity framework law it's already passed and it's already enacted. It's enforceable right now. We're waiting for some infra-legal regulations or for stuff to fully be um, on the street, like we said. So if you can see, we have a new agency, new cybersecurity obligations, scope, uh, who is an essential service, and different things that are very similar to the NIS 2 regulation in the European Union. So it's the same case again, but with another topic that it's cybersecurity. An interesting thing is that we in Chile we haven't had a cybersecurity framework law. We have a only sectorial or specific, or we have to make a general provisions of law. We have to make it to different cases. So it's an advance in the regulatory landscape. We can discuss another opportunity if it's a good or bad law. But the thing is that the point is that these two laws, and with the fintech law too, are going to be the big laws that are going to be passed, are going to shape how Chile it's developed his regulation for the players, for the technology development, for the commerce, for how even a citizen deals with that stuff. Because I remember when the European Union bring all the GDPR stuff, I think you could remember better than me than the cookie stuff. Bring this little disclaimer, and we are so used to see this little cookie banner on our websites when we uh, uh, get inside to one of those, even Google sometimes. But before that, no, it was weird. It not was so common to see or to saw that stuff in the different websites. So I think that's little changes that we could see or might see in the day-to-day basis. We can have it now in Chile. We can have changes that we can really see for the day-to-day citizen, that it's not extremely related with law. It's not a lawyer. It's not dealing with that stuff. So I think it could be very interesting how it's going to be. So for the last part of my presentation, and then I'm going to bring my because I didn't mention the Artificial Intelligence Act. So after that, I'm going to bring Matthias de Paz. But let me address this little quick. So what is the link between regulation and standards? So at least from my view, we can see that they are their own words. Standard has all our own world with their own classifications, de facto standards, market standard, even by law standards. But we have it's a very developed world. And by the other side, we have the regulation, or I mean, I use in this kind of regulation, like all from law, from the constitutions to the info legal. So it's all the juridical system. So what is the point of contact between regulation and standards? At least the link that but we can see in the region, or at least in theory, because it's not that common, for example, to watch or to see, to find cases in the courts here in Chile that are dealing only with the standards. For example, it's obviously we can have a tort, and the tort is dealing with reasonable care, or if you are being negligent or not, but it's not the key. For example, when we remember the case from um, in the United States with Qualcomm, or with or even in Japan with the Betamax, and then with the VHS, with some cases, the key cases. But so here we are seeing, or we expected to see, that standardization first can support and inform policies and legal issues. We have one case that it's the USB-C. The USB-C here, it's a legal standard. So the Congress enacts a law that says that, oh, the USB-C law, all the things. I'm going to be general, but it's the law. It's a little bit more specific, but just to bring the case to the table, a case for a law that put a standards, like for all the markets. So we have this case here, like USB-C by law, standard by law. So that's one of the things that we could see in the future with standards and standardization in the area of fintech, cybersecurity, and data protection. But in the we also expect to see that these standards, for example, ISO, can inform some compliance stuff. Some obviously telecommunications is one of the main areas that it's a little bit obvious that we have a standard. So I think telecommunication, it's like their own case. And actually it works. I think obviously it's not perfect, but it works very well with the process standardization. I mean, but I think with our CDOs in the region are going to have these discussions, this dialogue between the different key players. And obviously they are we know that standardization is public and it's one of their main assets to bring to the table when we are dealing. Oh, this thing is voluntary, but why, if it's voluntary, why you need it? So I think a lot of great ideas coming from other countries, or mostly, I hope so, from the European Union. It's going to bring a lot of ideas to this SDOSA discussion in the Chilean region, and then on the Andean region, and bring informed policy and support changes for the better. Second, I think it's could help complying with legislation. Sometimes standards, if they are harmonized, or even if they are not, standards sometimes bring even more protection, or even are better than the regulation itself. We have seen that in Chile with our previous regulation, data protection. The international standards bring a lot of different things. Sometimes even ISO 27,000 bring a lot for information to protect digital information. It was a better standard than the own law. So we hope that seeing that the standards bring a lot of value to, even if the law is not in the same, or it's being not able to bring the time gap. Because so, and the other thing that's, I think it's so interesting, is that torts or torts by fault mostly, at least I think, being a little bit generous, but in the region and even in the United States, or some even civil law, so torts law, it's a little bit has their own uniqueness in each country. But most of the time we can find the different systems by fault, or when you are negligible or don't comply with with a standard, conduct, a standard in a legal terminology, and a strict liability. So we can find these two words on how we can, if you do harm or make some harm, you have to pay or repair. It's obligation to repair, mostly in civil law. Mostly in torts, dealing with the civil law harms. We have this structure of torts. Tort, it's for the people that it's not necessarily related with this area of law. It's the area of law that deal with what if you make harm to a person, when you have to pay, or when you are enforceable, or have to deal with the obligation of repair that harm that you already make or already have done. So that's tort. We have those different systems. Like on fault is that you have to make some to prove that you with evidence, obviously, that you make all your effort to comply, by different circumstances of life or the daily day basis you couldn't comply well, but you make all your effort. So that's the key point, because you make all your effort to comply with the law, but despite that, harm has been done. In this scenario, in that case, is we think that standards could come to the table and make some contributions to the people that are trying to make their best effort, but sometimes they don't know how to make this best effort. So with the standards, they can read it, they can implement it, they can read with internet, or even with consultant firms or different players that they can make their good effort to comply, um, or to not make harm. So we hope to see at least standards to being at least a standard, being a standard in the legal term or the legal sense. So um, that at least of how the things are at the moment, or at least the status quo, or the it's we are seeing that that's the way that standards could make an amazing point, just not to be um, just the voluntary stuff that we're seeing. That the thing is, it's very interesting because we can discuss it after that. Standards should be, or one of the main assets, it's voluntary. So we are seeing that could be not that voluntary. So it's a very interesting thing that we can see. We can, uh, I mean, theoretical, it's a thing, but we are seeing like countries like Chile where that we have standards by law. So it's very interesting, that stuff. So that's my presentation, and I now I pass to Matthias with one of the latest development that we have seen, because it has like 2 days. And he can bring you light on that stuff, and it's very interesting because it's a topic that now it's a famous topic on the technology area. So please, Matthias, all your
Gracias, Chris. I'm gonna make a small presentation to the point related to the Chilean AI bill. It was just yesterday, as I said before, approved by the Chamber of Deputies, like the lowest chamber, particularly with the Committee of Science and Technology. Then it's an early development. We need two more steps. Is that go through? To get the bill. Something that is interesting is that this is the last year of the President Boric, and one of the aims of the government is try to like publish, or enact the law by this year. It's going to be a hard challenge because most of the second semester is going to be focused on the campaign, but at least they are trying really hard to publish this law. But my idea is that maybe they're not gonna be so lucky, no, because by the end of the year, most probably the new government, if that change the political color of the government, is gonna try to do a different kind of regulation. This is the regulation in Chile has a strong influence for the European AI Act, with the particular focus in SMEs. No, they have a full chapter on promotion of SMEs within the development of AI, and a strong focus in gender discrimination, particularly because it's been one of the strongest points of the Ministry of Science and Technology. Something that happened a lot, has been happening in the last regulation, has a lot of delegation on technical committees, and to remove that from the political or from the ministries in charge of regulation. Key definitions, just to bring some key elements from the regulation. First, the definition of artificial intelligence is similar that the one is being developed in the European Union. We have like machines, algorithms, or mathematical models that explicit or implicit, this description that doesn't make much sense. Infer from an input is received how to generate output from such a predictions, no? And then you bring all the possible influence. Again, it's a regulation that doesn't bring the idea of a deterministic versus a non-deterministic model. Second, it brings this idea of significant risk, similar to the one you have in the European Union, no? Focus on severity, intensity, and likelihood of occurrence. Sadly, doesn't bring the distribution of the damage. That means if the damage is more focused in one group or another as a standard measure for discrimination, but maybe this is something that is going to bring in the future, in the future discussion in the parliament, because a lot of changes that we still can do. And also that is very important is that they bring the reasonability of use. No, it's a tool of artificial intelligence or a tool of software said is supposed to have one kind of use and use it for a different one. No, you have an exclusion for responsibility or liability. Then these are the three main elements that they are different or a strong point. The scope is similar to the one we have in the European Union, and there's a regulation. Maybe with the exclusion in national defense, no, and there's a general exclusion in national defense, and it's related, no, with research and development or activities, everything that is developing without real data, and open source. No, open source without charge, it should be outside. An interesting point that it's going to be related, at least for what we can have in this project. First is the idea of sandbox or regulatory sandbox. Even though the project has the remission that sandbox are going to be created, there's a lot of standardizations and ideas how to create correct sandbox. Second, the sanctions are quite high, similar to the one we have in the regulation of data protection. Is in European currency is 1.2 million euros, and has an interesting sanction. No, that is in case that you present a lawsuit against a company and you win the trail. No, you can put the expenses into the company for them to publish the decision, and that is an interesting point. We still have, at least in my impression, a couple of years to have this regulation, but it's a good starting point for all the needs that we now have in the implementation of this regulation. Just make a short point. And following the words of Chris, for us is very important to have this kind of discussion, particularly with the regulatory standards bodies in the European Union, no, because there is a lot to implement to have a correct or a more developed standard of production of software and different technologies. Xavier.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, Christian, for this very interesting presentation. And on one hand, the update about the status and landscape, I would say, from the regulatory side in Chile, but also about your goals with the project. I would say my first comment, if I may, is to say that there was a word that was used several times, but which I consider a keyword, is the word mutual. We talked about mutual understanding. We talk about building bridges, avoiding, and making sure that we actually exchange information and know about each other. What's for sure is that in the domain of ICT, the challenges that we face, they don't have a concept of border. They don't care about the continent. We face the same challenges, basically. So we are led to bring the same or answer the same questions when it comes to protecting our citizens and preserving their rights and their interests. And also when enabling an industry and enabling trade, enabling products and services that leverage the new technologies. it's a big challenge, and we feel that that's really in the DNA, I would say, of ETSI and of the European Union. We feel that we have to cooperate, we have to discuss, we have to have dialogue. And even in a context right now where, you know, there's a tendency to look at uh, inwards rather than outwards, we still believe that it's very important uh, uh, to 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 foster cooperation. And so when it comes to standards, actually, I mean, if we have been able in one region of the world um, to address a specific challenge or to create standards that come in support of policies that are shared by other um, regions of the world, it's good if we can share this with others. It's good if we can avoid actually duplication of work and energy spent to create these standards. So, of course, on our end, if there are things that are considered relevant to support the Chilean legislative framework, we're happy to share them, to present them at least so that the stakeholders in Chile can make an informed decision about whether they want to reuse that or build on that. So that's the spirit, basically. And also, the idea is also to develop cooperation around topics of common interest and around common values. I have a question, which is not really a technical question, sorry, but do you see a challenge in having a regulatory or legal framework uh, that is able to cope with the pace at which the ICT world evolves? I can tell that from the standardization standpoint, it's a bit of a challenge, I would say, even in cases where we have a stable legislative context.
Chris, if you allow me, I can try to go first. We have several problems with that with the solution of that question. Now, first, it's a democratic question. This is the first one. And the democratic question is which regulations are democratically enough to follow the standard. Let me explain myself. No, most of what we have now is a technical regulation from government agencies, but they don't go through the democratic process. Then mostly we have a discussion if the people really want that kind of regulation. It's mostly like the political view of the government or the political party who is in the government, particularly in polarization, in a polarization age, no, in which like we have like really extreme governments back and forward. No, this is the first question that is hard to solve. Second is that, and again, it's a political problem. There's a political point. Is at least in our experience, when we have big problems, politicians tend to try to bring calm to the people. No, it's not a really big problem. We don't need to address that too much. Blah blah, and that make you lose some, or you lose some time until the problem is big enough to have a regulation. No, and in the opposite, you have some words like artificial intelligence, in which you have this FOMO. No, everyone is really want to like try to regulate artificial intelligence, but you are not sure about what to say about artificial intelligence. And the example of that is something that we have in now, this problem currently, no, in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, a big problem is that the Agency of Cybersecurity in Chile, they told last week that the list of which companies are under essential infrastructure, blah, 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 is not a public list. And you are like, what is the point of not having a public list of who is a blah, 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 no? And but in the opposite, no, and then they say, of course, the standards that we're gonna say are not necessarily public. Only the regulated companies are gonna know. But if you talk with the companies, they're not sure if they are under that list or not. And of course, for the government, it's not a big problem because it's something very technical. No, this is like we don't really care because it's too technical. But in artificial intelligence, everyone is jumping into artificial intelligence because everyone knows ChatGPT, and because of that, everyone have a word in that, and not. Then the first question is a political question. No, the second approach, and is a typical discussion, an ex ante and ex post kind of discussion. No, when we talk about standards, we know previously which are the process that we know enough to develop, that we know some of them. No? But it's really hard for the lobbyist or whatever, no, to bring some of the standards. But we don't have a strong court cases about liability cases. Then the position that at least I have, and I think we share it with Chris, is sometimes we just need a good standard to bring to the court and say, look, we have a really good standard. The company didn't follow up. This company is liable. And that is a complicated framework, not necessarily because we don't know how to regulate. It's because we have a lot of different interests and political interests, and political goals bring it to the regulation that maybe are not the main focus. Then I think the big problem is a political problem more than a.
But I understand about your second point that if you want to be able to come to a court and say, I mean, it's a very black or white thing. Either you comply with this standard and you're in the clear, or not, and you're wrong, basically. This only works if the standard is mandatory.
Of course.
And then we go back to Christian's comments about voluntary applicability of standard or mandatory applicability of standard. In Europe, for example, there are harmonized standards that are cited in the in the official journal of the European Union, and which therefore are linked or tied to the law, but their use is still voluntary. You are allowed to use other technical solutions, and then you are forced to go to a technical body or certification body, actually, that will give you a stamp saying, yes, you comply with the with the essential requirements of this legislation, so that ultimately, which way you go, you are able, it's true, you are able to say, yes, I comply. But it's not easy for all topics to have such a clear context, I would say, and there is a lot of work to do around this. But for sure, in Europe, standards are used to enable compliance with legislation. They may not be the only solution to comply with the legislation, but they are definitely a tool that is also really helpful for, especially for the smaller members of the industry, the SMEs and others. I think in the project you're running, there's going to be an event at some stage, I think end of July, which will be able to gather people from the policy world, from the technical world, and bringing people from Chile, from Europe. We really look forward to taking part in this event and to actually fostering participation from the European side, so that it is a very helpful event, and that it is also one of the stepping stones, I would say, in further developing the cooperation between Chile and the European Union. I don't really have other comments, but I think it's probably a good news because I'm looking at the clock and it's we're coming to an end. I want to note one of the things you mentioned, Matthias, in the beginning, which made me think that indeed, thanks to ICT, we are able to build bridges to connect people, and to make some miracles. Because if I understand correctly, you say that you were able to have mathematicians talk to lawyers. So I say that joking, but it's very interesting. All the tools we have at that are available to us, but it's also very how to say, challenging in terms of keeping people at the center of the picture, preserving human rights, preserving privacy, all of those things. It's a very interesting challenge, and it's also very good if we can all work together to address them.
The table should be big enough to bring everyone to have a seat, no? That is the main point.
Yes. I want to really thank you again for your presentation today. It will be made available on our website. And again, we look forward to seeing the further evolution of your work and to support it, actually, to be a support to you in making this happen and having the impact that you were targeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you to our viewers. And I wish you a good weekend and rest of the day.